We've heard a lot about shale gas in the Karoo, and people have been talking about the impact on the environment. But the fact is, there's a lot of Karoo, and we need a lot of energy. And it's not going to be like a massive, great hole of Kimberley that's going to be dug there. But there is an enormous amount of gas potentially under the ground in the Karoo, and I think we might have the 5th or 4th largest reserves in the world. And it's not just the giant macroeconomic effects that we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about the supply chain opportunities. I mean, there are so many industries and so much infrastructure that will be built around shale gas deposits over not just a few years, but many, many decades. In the studio with me now is Charlotte Batson from Batson and Company. There's a conference going on in Cape Town around shale gas at the moment. Charlotte, tell us about the conference first of all.
Well, it's a collection of people from South Africa, Africa, and elsewhere around the world to discuss the potential, the risks involved, and also the many opportunities from a variety of perspectives: governmental, the private sector, the service companies, the operators, and from shale gas experts from the United States and elsewhere.
So this is the real deal now. We've talked about this for quite a while, and suddenly the government has said, yes, we can go ahead and do it. Is this a massive deposit we're talking about here, and how important might it be to South Africa?
Yes, it is massive. The EIA, the part of the Department of Energy in the U.S. that did a global study earlier this year, estimates that the reserves are potentially the 5th largest shale reserves in the world, which is quite game-changing. It's enough to power all of South Africa's needs for a couple of hundred years. It could reduce imports. It could bring electricity to parts of the country that may not be thoroughly served, and create, as you were saying, many, many supply chain jobs and investment, foreign investment. So it's really tremendously game-changing in a number of ways.
What about the US experience? Because you've been involved in this at Batson and Company for quite a while now. The US experience, has it been beneficial? I mean, gas prices are at very, very low levels at the moment, but that's not the point. I think the strategic importance of these reserves are terribly important, but also the supply chain and the whole all the industries that spring up around this. Can we apply what's happened in the United States, for example, to what might happen in South Africa?
Absolutely, absolutely. The process as it works of developing these resources requires an enormous amount of innovation on the part of the suppliers, the supply chain companies, the upstream companies that actually do the development in the areas of water processing and maintaining environmental quality. And all of those kinds of activities will be of tremendous benefit. Now, you were mentioning strategic importance in the U.S., and I should point out that because of the shale development in the U.S., imports of oil are down to 40%, 42%, which is approximately a 20-year low. And so we're reducing our imports. We have a number of industries that are stimulated because of the low gas price, including petrochemicals, GTL, and nitrogen-based industries, and there are a number of LNG exports. And so there are a number of industries that are actually stimulated by the low price and simultaneously reducing emissions. So it has a whole set of benefits that would very appropriately could come to pass in South Africa also.
The key point here, I think, is that there is an awful lot of publicity at the moment around the way that South Africa has mismanaged may be a stronger word, but not fully taken advantage of the resources that we have under the ground: gold, platinum, iron ore, manganese, coal, etc. And I think what the government must do now is set out a framework and infrastructure that means that the potential energy that's under the ground is not mismanaged in the same way. I mean, obviously companies like yours are seeking to be consultants to the South African government in that regard, but are you confident that that can be, that lofty goal can be achieved?
Certainly, absolutely. Everyone I've met and spoken with, including people on my plane accompanying me on the trip, and you know, I always like to talk to cab drivers and just whoever's around. And my sense is that even the people that are very concerned about the environmental and you know, those kinds of issues are thinking seriously about it because they recognize the strong potential to really jumpstart the economy and the whole array of benefits that it would bring if developed responsibly.
To communities and to the economy as well. I mean, you've got
Absolutely.
this giant presentation here. I'll just show you this. This is an enormous booklet I've got. But if I go to, here we go, resource-intensive supply chain, it goes from exploration to drilling to hydraulic fracturing to completion, gathering and transportation, processing, environmental mitigation, marketing and sales. I mean, I can see literally hundreds of thousands of jobs potentially over years and decades being created because of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. The oil and gas supply chain is plugged into many different economic sectors. You know, I like to think that it's one industry that no other industry is independent from. It's the lifeblood. But even aside from that, there's steel products and tubulars, various types of equipment, computer networking, instrumentation, chemicals, minerals, just a whole logistics industry. It bears a huge impact from this, and just an enormous and huge variety of different types of industries and services are part of the oil and gas supply chain.
Have you been out there? Have you been out to the crew? I mean, many people would say it's just an ugly, flat place with the occasional tor or hillock here and there and a few sheep, but it's actually a very, very beautiful place with a unique ecosystem. We're not going to mess it up, are we, environmentally?
If done responsibly, no. No. And the U.S. experience is that you have to have certain regs that, and often I think that the risks are not as portrayed by the detractors. The risk of actually polluting the groundwater and so on is, in the words of the economist, no systemic risk. And but there are some risks. You know, of course, we don't live in a risk-free world. The risk of surface spills, for example, is a lot more significant. And these kinds of things can easily be cleaned up, managed, mitigated, and violators should be held to account, of course. So, and in fact, there are even some environmental benefits that can come from this.
Are you engaging with government? We've only got about 30 seconds left now, Charlotte. Are you engaging with government and other potential stakeholders to actually create a long-term plan, or is it all a little bit haphazard and unknown at the moment?
Well, I'm certainly making lots of contacts here at the conference, and I certainly hope to have ongoing working relationships with them and add expertise where appropriate. I do think that everybody has started thinking in the same direction. How coordinated that is, I couldn't say, but everybody's thinking very seriously and wants to...
Is everyone excited?
I think so, absolutely, absolutely. It's an exciting thing.
Yeah.
It can totally turn around many parts of the economy.